this verb. And I think that we have to ponder over this word. We cannot enhance something that does not exist. So what is there to enhance? So we have to. There should be some word before that. Before talking about enhancement. But you just come and say, I'll do some enhancement activities for what? What have you done before to talk about enhancement activities? So that's the first thing I would like to talk about this week. And when we say enhancement, we also say, or mean, enhancement of learning skills, learning potential, etc. And of course, what we might not be aware of in the right way is that there is also enhancement of teaching methodology. That is, your own teaching is also, when you do some enhancement activities for your students, it's also enhancement of your teaching potential, etc. And of course, those teachers interested in self-development have to invest a lot of time and a lot of efforts into these things so that the results can be and for these enhancements to be successful, enhancement activities to be successful, I think that when you talk about, for example, asking students to write and asking something that I don't agree with in enhancement activities, because then you're not doing anything. You say, when you ask your students to write a short story or a poem, then where's your job? What have you done? So you're just asking somebody to do something. So the teacher and his teaching methods or his techniques should be insightful. Meaning, when I say insightful, and we explain the word insightful, it means that you have to create something inside your students so that they can start that creativity, or they can unlock that creativity inside. So, how to make your teaching or you make yourself insightful in the eye of your students, that's another story, and a long story that needs a lot of research, etc., and needs a lot of discussion. When I decided to talk about enhancement activities, I decided to talk about these enhancement activities in three ways. Before the enhancement activities, and why doing the enhancement activities, and post-enhancement activities. So the first thing that you should do, or that we should do, is, what do you think? What is the first thing to do before an enhancement activity? So it's supposed to be a workshop, but we're lucky that we're short of time, so it's going to be something, a workshop like, presentation like, and then from time to time I might ask some questions. So what do you think should be done before, but we would like to be brief in answering the questions. What do you think we should do before an enhancement activity? We have ever talked about these things.
I think the first step we can start with is to recognize the level of their needs.
Sure.
We can start now. We can start, when we do, or when we measure the level of study, the level of grammar, the level of, let's say, of language, acquisition of knowledge, we can start providing.
I think that your answer is a very good answer, and that's the thing. So I might say it differently, and what I would like to say is that you have to know your students perfectly well. And when we say know your students perfectly well, then it's like raising a very important issue. How do you? These are the questions that we never answer. Oh, you should know your students better. But now, and that's the second question. That is, if we are good at this, then we have to have an answer now to this question.
It starts right from knowing their needs first. The other question is that preparing them psychologically for the task at hand, so to achieve. That's this is, I think, the springboard for starting any management activity. If you don't establish kind of
it's like building up, because it's like a friendship. You build up that relationship. You never know a person that will become a friend that is immediate. It takes time to know that person and to know what he's good at, what makes him happy, what makes him happy, etc. It's not something that you can know from the first meeting. It takes time, but there should be that will to know that, and from the two parts, that is from the students and from the teacher. And once there is that willingness, then of course lots of things can become easier. But I do agree with you. It starts with those little things, but very important things, knowing their names, even calling them by their first names, etc. So things like that until you get closer to your students and get to know.
Try to know your students through a sort of informal needs analysis, through, I think, day-to-day practice.
But let me ask you, students, do you think that this is done?
Now, I'm not talking about informal. I'm saying informal. Chat to students to, recording their weaknesses during the after the lesson. They know the students are interested in this particular field.
I think in this country we have not done that much about needs analysis. Maybe some research papers have been done, or research have been carried out. Some research have been carried out. University about that, but I think it's in libraries. Nobody knows about that thing. And I think I would like to see in a conference in some of the upcoming MED conferences something about this needs analysis. What has been done in Morocco about these things, and what are the outcomes of that research, and the obstacles for doing that, etc. Things like that, so that we understand the problem. Our problem here, and yesterday we were talking about names and how to give high quality products. Well, it starts here. Sometimes we talk about certain things, but we never scrutinize them, we never get into the depth of things. And I think it's high time we started doing those things. We have those conferences where things are very, very specific about something. We come and we talk just about the present perfect. Maybe it's going to be boring for one day until we all know about how to teach this, what are the problems that happens to students in different regions in Morocco about this, and then maybe I'm sure that the results will be good. But if we talk a little about this and a little about that, and we never have that, we don't have that follow. That is following, trying to understand the real thing. So yeah, I do agree. That's the thing.
Because most of the complaints by teachers at the textbook level, at the methodology, at all levels, that because of this lack of conducting needs analysis, I'm not talking about an academic needs analysis, I'm talking about the teacher day-to-day practice, through the proximity.
Well, that's why I said inside, the teacher has to be inside. That once you are that insightful teacher, the students will come to you. But if you are not, there is nothing inviting your teaching in the teaching material that you use, because it's not just the teacher, but also that teaching material, then nothing will happen. That is, you're just wasting time and time. Now, let me talk about other things. So, yeah, I do agree that you have to know your students, what you have done, what they have done with other teachers, etc., until you get a clear idea of what is going on. And then the choice. The choice of this activity. So remember that the students are happy to do something that they are comfortable with. That is something that they can do before deciding whether that thing is a motivating, is an interesting topic or not. So the students are comfortable with the things that they can do first, that they are able to do before that is deciding whether it is interesting or not. If they can do it, then yeah, you might create that kind of interest. And of course, I'm sure that you know you talked about knowing your students and preparing for those enhancement activities. I do believe that what should happen at the beginning of every age, that is at the beginning of the school year, is some kind of training. That is, enhancement activities are somehow different and should be different and must be different from the atmosphere in a normal class situation or session. So the more different it is, the better results you get. And of course, this needs some training. Training in what? For example, at the beginning of the year, you kind of set up the objectives, the rules, how to, for example, you should have the students should have some training on how to set up groups, on what to do. You get those general instructions from the very beginning, and then during the year you have those specific instructions that are part of the general instructions. Then the second thing you have to set, nothing I think in the world of teaching, in the world of everything, when we don't have, even conferences, when we don't have real objectives, there will be no results. We don't set real objectives, clear objectives. So once we set clear objectives, then of course we're going to see whether we have been successful or not. If we have met those objectives, I think that the students have to be told about those objectives. This is what we want to do, and that's why you have to know your students, and you should also know, because there are some teachers, unfortunately, or some programs, unfortunately, that don't know where they are taking the students to. That is, we have to know where we are taking those students, to what, and of course that will by taking into consideration the level, the abilities, the potential of the students, you can kind of what do you say? Kind of shape the activity and everything related to that activity. So there should be some training, so we can talk about the importance of the activity. Now, some of the overall objectives, for example, the objectives of what behind the real or the overall objectives behind enhancement activities is what? Is, as I said at the beginning, is unlocking the hidden potential of students. And it's not about you, it's about them. It's about the students. And of course, if you can find ways, and there are hundreds of ways, to unlock that potential that the students have, then of course, I'm sure that with little techniques, with little help from supervisors, from teachers, from colleagues, things will be better. But as I said again, unfortunately, our problem yesterday, Hassim and the other colleagues were talking about mates. I know that the problem in mates and in many organizations in Morocco is that we don't know how to work together. C'est ça le problème. There is nothing else. We don't know how to work together. This is the biggest problem. If we know how to work together, lots of problems will be solved. And of course, I'm sure that you know there are lots of obstacles. So you are against the person, not against his. You should not be against the ideas of people. But people here are against people rather than against their ideas. And this is our big problem. We can be summarized in 2 points. We don't know, or in 1 point, which means a lot. We don't know how to work together. And of course, if we can solve and overcome this obstacle, lots of things will be easier, and we can. So, for example, is making the students confident in themselves, an ability to take risks that they would not have taken before. And once we do this, I'm sure that thing will be. So that's briefly about what should be done before enhancement activity. During enhancement activity, of course, you have to your role should be just a role of facilitator. Bear in mind that you have set up rules, that you have trained them on how to organize and how to set groups and how to do things generally speaking. And then, of course, during you explain some specific instructions related to that specific enhancement activity exam. So I'm sure that that this is the main thing. So, and of course, your role differs from one activity to another, and differs from whether it is the first enhancement activity or the third. And in the more enhancement activities you do, the fewer roles any role, but just maybe you can participate with the students in one of the activities, and that would bring some fun into the classroom and something that is related to that insight I talked about, and that's building up a relationship itself. So now let's talk about, for example, let me give you an example. After the post is following the project, and sometimes you can ask people to do a project, etc. And of course you have to follow that. And of course it's not just in that boring, dull relationship, somebody giving you that thing as kind of homework, and you correct it and you give it to him. So there should be that human relationship, that real supervising of the thing. And once there is that thing, there is encouragement, and of course people can produce better results after that. Now let me give you about, for example, when we talk about creative writing in enhancement activities. I'm sorry, I'm talking about lots of things that are supposed to be talked about in a more time than this, but I'm doing my best. For example, you want students to write a short story. I think that it's easy to say, hey, write a short story, it is a content. And I think it's done this way in many places. And sometimes it comes from the students. Now, how can we do it? And can we create the spring for this from the classroom? That's the question. Yes, sir.
I think the first thing we should do is bring the stories to the students.
Sure.
To read them, analyze them, explain them more, some techniques, the organization of it.
Sure.
And later we can ask them to.
Sure. Because of the lack of time, so I'm going to give you a suggestion, for example. So you can you have already talked, suppose you have already talked about the techniques of writing a short story, etc. And depending on the level, or the level of your students, and the way you talk about them depends on the level of the students. Now, you can bring six different short stories. And then you have 6 different groups in the classroom. And each students will have, each students in each group will read the same story. And then after that, each student is going to tell the other person from another group that story. So storytelling. And of course, then you can have a discussion about what other techniques used by the end of that. But then, what should happen? You can ask them like this, something very simple. Change the characters, depending on the level. Change the characters in the story. Add an environment to that story. Stop the story in the middle and then write it your own way. This is how you can start. Maybe something which is not 100% theirs, but then later, I'm sure that they will produce their own short story.
Could we ask them to report ask them to talk about the components of the story?
Yeah, why not? It depends on, as I said, it depends on your objectives and the level of the students and the time of the year. Yeah, of course, the setting, etc. So, but once you do activities like this, I'm sure that they get some of the techniques, etc. So when you change just the names of the characters, then they follow the story. And maybe if you delete or if you reduce the number of characters and then focus on one, or maybe change one evil character into a good one, then what happens? What are the adjectives? So there are ways. So that's it's much better than just asking the students to write a short story, which is, when you say ask your student to write a story, what is your what have you done? What is your contribution to this? It's almost nothing. So this is briefly, because I have to give the floor to Blibil. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just appreciate the idea of having students write a story, but I'm sure if you ask your kids to write a story, anything will be blah. Because they don't have, they don't have the language and the material to write. So what I suggest is maybe have the students work together in groups of mixed abilities, and you have to name a leader. You have to name a group leader, the group reporter, the timekeeper, and so on and so forth. And this way, you will be sure that the students will be actively involved in the activity. And I'm going to be pretty sure that my students stay on task, and this is a better way for you to keep track of their work. You know, everybody make sure is taking an active part in the activity.
Sure, as I said, your role is a facilitator, and of course, once you know your students, I'm sure that you so I'm not going to impose things, but I'm just giving a suggestion. I'm sure that the more you think about it, the better you're going to be your force. Yeah, I think now I'd like to conclude with one thing. We need that you know that T in the world of teaching. Not teacher talking time. I'm talking about train, teach, and then transform. Teach, train first, train your students, then you train your students and then teach. And when we say teach, it's not that teach, it's doing your job in general, but not teaching that is vocabulary items, etc. So, and then of course, you might transform some people from what? From constantly, or those students that are constantly dependent on others for learning, to independent, lifelong learners. Thank you, and now I'll give the floor to Blibil for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassim. Now, when talking about the enhancement activity, the idea that came to my mind was project work. And personally, I think what I think enhancement activity should be some kind of complement, not a regulation of the visual classroom teaching. Here I have chosen one activity that I think most teachers usually find quite difficult. And this is a challenge because of the situation that we have in our classroom, the number of students, etc., the lack of materials, the lack of places where we can organize and conduct this kind of activity. What I'm going to what I'm doing is, the things that I would have last year are out of my own experience, because 3 years ago I had to try for some project where during 3 years, and at the beginning, it was not easy to try activities in our classroom. So first of all, we have this definition about what project work is. So it is an instructional strategy of empowering learners to pursue learning on their own. This is very important here because these activities can lead to a kind of student-centered learning. And they can also demonstrate their own new understandings through a variety of organization knowledge. The things that they have learned in the traditional classroom teaching can be applied in something that is outside of the classroom. And this is important why project work is important. So, first of all, why project work? Because most of the students usually ask us, we need something different. And this is the question that we often hear. Like, why don't we do today something different? And remember that question is very holds a lot of meaning, and we can influence our students usually. Want something, what to get out of the ordinary, was to get out of what's happening in the classroom, was to get out of the text, and want to do something different. So, to do project work or to implement project work in our teaching can provide for this or can answer these questions, this question, and also complement the classwork. Project work is never meant for replacing classwork, but rather for complementing what must be taught formally. And also to get the students into genuine management learning. When we talk about motivation, we see that project work provides context where the learner might feel a genuine need for using the language. But also, it helps in setting up context where learners are required to actively engage in the purposeful communication. When we talk about that purposeful communication, we talk about that later when we come to the planning part. We students also can learn skills. First of all, they can there can be an integration of skills, as well as higher order skills like critical thinking, synthesizing, interpreting, life skills, interpersonal contact, initiation, problem solving, negotiation. Now, how does project-based learning work? Personally, I have chosen three stages. First one is preparation, which is very important. And why is it very important? First of all, especially when we start with all students, most of our students are not used to describe their work. So we have to think of ways to involve students in that activity. And the best way to do that is to start small. So as the students, to have the students get the feel of what project is. So we should not be too ambitious by proposing a very difficult project work. We should start, if we start with beginners, for instance, we can just ask them about their kind of biography or something like that. So just talk about themselves and write these things in a poster or do something in a CD, etc. and present this in front of. The preparation stage is also a good opportunity for students to communicate together, to initiate, etc. All you have to do is get the students into groups of 4, 5 students, for example, the class 4 is the ideal number, and then ask them to work on a plan. How they are going to do that project, what time will it take, and also they can even talk about the cost of the project. So when the students, usually when the groups of the students decide on their preparation, on their plan, there should be an exchange or presentation of these plans for the other groups, so the others can compare what they have done with the other groups. And this will certainly create a kind of discussion between the groups. The second point is process, and I think process is the most important thing. It's not the product, the end product. The end product is not very important. What's happening during the preparation or during of the project? What the students are doing? What materials did they use? What resources did they use? All these kind of things are very important. how did they work? How did they share their responsibility together? Responsibility shared. And finally, we have the final step, which is presentation, where the students will have, or the groups, will have to present their end product, either through presentations or posters or any videos, etc. So the end product should not be an aim, but it should only be a kind of celebration. That means we have to celebrate what the students have done. This is very important, because if the end product is not shown other people, is not made public, either in the classroom or outside the classroom, in the school, I think the students will not be motivated to do another project. So presentation is very important, and also the celebration of these end products is also very important. Now, how to deal with this project? It depends on, because most of the teachers, I personally, when I started project work, I had difficulty because I didn't know too much about project. The beginning was a failure. I have to admit here. Why? Because I did not have any idea about what project work is. But so the best thing to do is to have a look at some project work and to see how things are done, etc. So the first, the beginning, especially of the year, especially with beginners, we have to opt for a structured pedagogy. That means the teacher will have to control what the students are doing. For example, we have assigned some kind of activity and follow these students' work by checking time to time what they are doing, to help them get the feel or get accustomed to this kind of. We can also opt for semi-structured. We can propose, we suggest set up, give a margin for the students to initiate, to create, to try other things. And we have, of course, if our students are very motivated and have some kind of artistic project work, we can give them, we can just propose the topic for the project, and we can give them the freedom to choose half part of that project, what means that, which is, I think, the best way. This is how project work should be done, especially when students are used to this kind of work. Now, we have some practical considerations because we have to review some models to get the feel of the procedure to be followed. And also we have to start small by using very structured projects to visualize an activity, and we have also to exhibit students' projects, and this is very important in the school library, we said. And finally, we have to gradually to step out of the way, and this is the final, the structured, unstructured node, right? To step out of the way and let the students do the job on their own with only minimum guidance. Now we're talking. So we have also to think of learning This is some of the characters of project work, so the students will learn on how to manage their learning, which is very important, and also the students will learn how to give their own learning, and also he or she will engage in cooperative work, which is very important, and which is unfortunately lacking in our classrooms. And also, the students will learn how to adapt to such conditions. And remember, we have time pressure, we have poor logistics sometimes in our schools, remember. And also, we have the scarcity of resources. I will add another thing which is very important, which is security. In civics education, also to teach security aspects is to go to the dumps and write a report on what has happened there, which is very dangerous, and I think it's not, we have to be sure when assigning some activity, whether the students will be secure and whether the teacher will be secure too, because you're not going to ask the student to go somewhere, which is, so we have to consider these things. Drinking is very important.
Fine. It is still time for her.
So, drinking is very important. The process that we are beginning, the process is very important. And from time to time, when the students begin their work, from time to time we have to ask groups to talk about what they have done, what problems they have, etc. So these briefings are necessary, or checkpoints are necessary to control the students' work, which is very important, to make sure that things are going on. And the second, to assess the students' performance and make sure that all the members of the group were really doing their job, responsibility sharing, and also to encourage groups that were lagging behind to catch up with the others. Sometimes some of the students are lagging behind, so when they see the other groups are moving on, they will take that into consideration, and to give the students the opportunity to assess their work through comparison with the work of others. And this happened, and I have noticed in my classroom, most of the groups have decided to change the whole thing because they noticed that the other groups have done something better. And so they come to realize that what they are doing is not worth following up. So they have changed the whole thing, and they suggested other activities. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. I hope that you are good and enjoying your stay in Marrakech. So, going hand in hand with the similar theme, that is proper capacity building and leadership development, I would like to say that exposing the students to the 21st century skills is an urgent need now, and that is to spread the way to leadership and to build good leaders with a stronger capacity to deal with the real-life context. There are many areas where we can have access to development of the students' abilities, and one of them is community service. So, when I say community service, so there are words that come to your mind. So, can you give me just examples? Community service. What are the first words that?
Volunteer.
Volunteer.
Associations.
Associations.
Care for the earth environment.
Sorry?
Care for the earth environment.
Care for the environment. This is an example.
Active citizens.
Active citizens. Teamwork. Teamwork.
Project work.
Project work. Yeah, it has a link with the... Nice. So, can you think of some examples of the community service that you'd like to do with your students? Like visiting the old people house or something? Why not teaching the classroom or just the tables?
Planting.
Planting. Or workshop. Sorry?
Blood drive campaign.
Great.
Raising money.
Raising money for charity and
Collecting clothes, giving them to an orphanage. Collecting clothes and giving them to an orphanage.
Yeah, someone said there is a technical term called like clothing drive. So, now, can you visualize the students' impression? What do you think the students will feel when you do a community service activities? Can you visualize the impact? Motivation.
Highly motivated.
High motivation. That's it. So let's move. So today I will talk in a very narrow sense, that is access program and community service. But these things can be applicable with all the students in different classrooms, and not just in the access program. So definition, we agree on one thing, that services. So community service are services volunteers by individuals or an organization, as you say, to benefit a community or its institution. So here we have the volunteer work, and the benefit work of the public, that is the common work. And it's some types of help and assistance in general. And it's unpaid. So we are not going to do community service. So here we are talking about volunteer work in general. So the goals. Students also need to train and making them feel good about themselves. So they like themselves when they do something well, there is self-satisfaction, they believe in good change. So, and also increasing the students' motivation and engagement, acquiring nice behaviors, thinking about the others, helping the others, feeling a little bit the ego, and in that sense, becoming part of a larger community beyond the access program. So when we visit the hospital or something, so we're not doing just with an academic background, just working inside the classroom or something. So the community as a whole, making new friends and very interesting people in the community, developing strong leadership skills, rising their self-esteem, getting the appreciation of the others, and having the students get better in their schools, because they are learning the value of time management and education, developing a sense of responsibility, and doing students community service that interests the students. In my experience, I saw that some students now are planning to have a career that was in relation with the community service they So we will context by an course, community service learning can be a powerful way for students to learn and engage meaningfully with the curriculum. So who will be on the academic curriculum? Approaches can range from projects or group assignments to research-based service and can provide enough from short to long-term involvement. So today I'm going to talk about community service. Just as a sharing, to share with you my experience rather than to talk about community service activists. So, environmental responsibility, garden workshop. So, this is my experience with my students at the level of the Access Center I'm working in Tazan. So, believing that the environment education becomes an urgent need in our curriculum to build the students' awareness, to look for ways to help the environment. So, in this workshop, we start with a theoretical background. It was a kind of lesson on how to plant, actually, to the plantation in general. Then we move to the practical one. So planting, so here it's a kind of helping the school in which the access class is taking place. So we work on the area. And the students love to do things, they would like to talk to them about them. And of course here, I would like to say that the involvement of the teacher is highly appreciated. It's a healthy involvement. So we should not be like all the time asking the student to do things, but we should be involved with them so that they will be more motivated and we can give more. So here is one of the most touching experience I have seen with my students, visiting the abandoned baby centers, clothes and food donation. So here we got some clothes for the babies, in addition to food, and we visit the center. Students really touched a lot in this experience. And I still remember that one of the students, my student told me that at that day they were like moms and dads, and they were a great emotional relationship with the students. And we talked about even we raised the problem of single moms, and I told them that we're happy because we have parents. But the students, the only difference between us is that they are not, they lost their moms and dad. So, and they're exposed to that problem. So, as I said, so they helped with feeding the babies, even changing their diapers. And what is good is that community service should be an ongoing process. Is that we should not be limited just at that day. Some students now they have regular visits with their parents, not just with the. I saw many students like one student coming there with their parents. That's what's we were now to go on. See? And here I'm working at the level of environmental club or two, and we help access students help the club to create some green spaces at school. And we have little actions like picking up the trash at school. So these little actions can really help to build real leaders in Europe. So and we organize a clothing drive. That is collecting clothes. And here we were classifying the collected clothes depending on age and gender, some clothes of girls or boys. After the clothing drive, so the access students visited the hospital to give the collected clothes to some people there. And so I'm not providing pictures because we were not allowed to take pictures that day. So, but the least activity, well, it was at the 8th time, so it is a moment to celebrate sacrifice life. So we had some beggars on the streets. We got other collection of clothes. Just to respect a little bit the living of the people on the streets, so we should not show the faces. And we visit the hospital too. So here we put in the hospital boxes, the clothes there. We do have the doctors and the nurses. So we will close the people there. And we participate with some plastic bags. You know, the trash goes in the 8 days. So we get some plastic bags and we give them to some families. I know that the mosque do this job in the time of Eid, so we give plastic bags, but we know that some families so we don't have them. So, to conclude, the economic service is a meaningful tool to build our future leaders capacities and to give the 21st century speed. So, thank you so much.
I'd like to react to the last presentation about community service. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on the effort, the initiative taken, and it's highly commendable. And I would love to just share some my experience in experiential training, which is somewhat related to what you did. There's the challenges that this kind of initiatives faces is sometimes not apparent to the fieldwork professional. There's a thick pedagogy for doing community service or fieldwork, and the risk you might run is being caught up in doing the activity and forgetting about the important parts of the activity itself. And I'd like to focus on three things which I have come to recognize as highly important. Basically meaning, transformation, and empowerment. Whatever you're doing, it has to be meaningful to the people you're working with. Obviously, it's already there. The students recognize the value of the activity, and it's something that touches them at a personal level, and that's something that is highly important for the energy of the activity itself, for sustainability, and also for the motivation to be involved and to bring other people to participate. And I think from a pedagogical perspective, the facilitator of the intervention, or the teacher in this case, should spend some time thinking about how to use the meaningfulness of this experiential training, transformation of the values of students. And one way you can do that is debriefing. Whenever you debrief, whenever you do some field activity, you go back to the class and you debrief it. And preserving the meaningfulness of the activity presumes that you give the students the platform or the floor to share their experience and to provide a non-threatening environment so that they can open up and talk freely about how they felt, how they related to that experience, and so on and so forth. And to try to play the role of the person who connects the dots between the experience, the already existing value system, and where you want them to go to become humane students, leaders, etc., etc. The second thing I want to focus on is how these activities serve as an empowering process for students. And here, focus should be on both the substance and the process. The process has to be positive. It has to foster those values in the sense that it has. I really liked the fact that you hit the faces of the beggars, and this is something that is in line with what I'm saying. Here you're working both on the substance and the process. You're introducing the concept of ethics, the concept of respect, and doing practicing what you preach.
to practice. And thank you for doing that. And I think we should take an example.
Speakers, and I have a question, maybe a question to start with you. Is when you start defining the word enhancement and asking the question, enhancing what? Something came to my mind is about why are we labeling these activities enhancement activities? I don't know who came up with this name, but I'm not blaming it. Why don't we change the name? Because we are going to enhance, as you said, we have to enhance something that is flawed, that is a problem with it. But what we're doing are extra activities to consolidate maybe what we are doing and in order to reach our objective. If we're doing structured lessons, regular lessons, we are not reaching some objectives. So probably these activities are going to help us reach our objectives. So probably we should think about the different name, consolidating activities, reinforcement activities. Project-based learning and community service learning are approaches that have been adopted in some countries in line with the educational policy of this country. What we are doing, and we teachers, is something great, and we are doing it at an individual level, and we are taking risks. We are in isolation of our educational system. We all appreciate what you are doing, what we are doing, but we have to point out that this is out of the system that we are in. Thank you.